It's been about a month since Star Wars Battlefront II began its epic run in blowing up on the Steam charts. However, it is slowly but surely falling off. On the Reddits, r/we want Battlefront 3, as well as r/Star Wars Battlefront, there have been desperate cries for another resurgence day. I think this is far too early for these cries, as the last one was not that long ago, and I really don't want people getting too burnt out on the game. People are also questioning, when are we going to get another Battlefront 3 movement trend? And I think this is a big mistake. I think we need to work on the community continuously returning to Battlefront 2 and having fun versus constantly pushing for Battlefront 3. That's just a quick way to annoy the player base and outside fan bases, and especially casual players. And desperation does turn into copium as we try and get other game studios to make Battlefront 3. EA is our last hope, but there is another. Battlefront 3 Valve. Although Gabe Newell has never even heard of the number 3 before, so they might be our last hope ever. YouTubers are even putting up billboards requesting Star Wars Battlefront 3 at this point. Now, here is, I think, the big point in all of this, is that maybe the community pushed a little too hard for Battlefront 3, and I was definitely culpable in this. I got all excited at the prospect of all of this community attention going towards EA, trying to get them to push to make Battlefront 3. Then, of course, we got the very sad news that they have absolutely zero intention of returning to the Battlefront franchise. Maybe if we pushed for something smaller first, like they're saying here, in updating Battlefront 2 yet again, we would have been more successful, starting with just a foot in the door, and then once that takes off, moving on to potentially try and get Battlefront 3 made. But the community is so splintered between asking for Battlefront 2 updates, to asking for a new game studio to make the game, to asking EA to continue to make for Battlefront 3, and then everyone posting a different new resurgence day. It seems like every weekend is a new resurgence day, but the problem is that no one is actually taking charge and making a good plan for the entire community to come together and work towards a Battlefront 3. So right now, the Battlefront 2 news is absolutely abysmal. We're getting no updates for that, we're getting no Battlefront 3, and the community is completely splintered, or just straight up annoying players, driving them away from playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 in general. I think it also does not help the fact that Star Wars Battlefront 2 ended up being one of those Minecraft phenomenons where people hop into the game for a solid 2 weeks of play and then start calling it quits. I could see this game turning into the Minecraft cycle, except the difference is Minecraft still gets updates and attention. Real quick, huge thank you to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. They have literally the best deals in gaming. I use it all the time. If you like Star Wars games, Lego Star Wars for $2. Star Wars Battlefront 2 for $9. One of my favorite Star Wars games, Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, $1.70. If you want to play the Star Wars Galaxy at War mod, Men of War Assault Squad 2, $3. Extremely popular games can be up to 99% off. Link in the description below. Thank you to Instant Gaming for sponsoring the channel. Thank you guys for watching. Let's get into the video. Alright boys, we're hopping into a game of Galactic Assault on Hoth to talk about this news. Now sadly, this news is not very good news. And that's of course, as the intro stated, that we're basically losing player count every single day on Star Wars Battlefront 2. We've far from hit the peak of player count, which, to be fair, we did break multiple weeks in a row, which is more than impressive. I am super proud of the community in its ability to do that. I think that is absolutely fantastic, and probably will happen again at some point, I'm sure, because 18,000, while very impressive, is far from a huge amount of players on Steam in particular. So I think maybe we'll eventually get another peak player count experience on Star Wars Battlefront 2. But I think that's very far away, because right now we are in a downward trending cycle. all of the trending tabs of Xbox, PlayStation, etc. have fallen off for Star Wars Battlefront 2 from those all-time peaks, and that's kind of to be expected. Star Wars Battlefront 2, I think, is going to turn into one of those games where people rejoin it for some nostalgia and to mess around with their friends for a little bit of time, and then inevitably dip again. And the main reason for that is the fact that we're just getting no updates. And, you know, that's no one's fault but the game studio. We can't demand they just start working on updates and they do exactly that. And therefore, there's nothing for players to play towards. I've unlocked every single thing that I want to in Star Wars Battlefront 2. And beyond that, I have enough credits and points to unlock everything if I wanted to spend the time one by one unlocking those things. So there's very little incentive for me to actually hop on the game other than having some fun. And while I do that, you know, just about every week anyway, it keeps me from getting addicted to the game. I think this is going to turn into the Minecraft phenomenon again, that every 2 weeks a friend group has a huge amount of fun hopping in, getting nostalgic over the old maps, playing the old classes, etc., etc., and then after a while, with nothing really to work towards, they just go ahead and quit the game again. And I think that's exactly what has happened, except on a mass scale. Everyone jumped on, massive YouTubers, entire Reddit communities hopping on, massive pushes. Everyone had a blast for a few weeks there, and now people are ready for a game where they can actually play and unlock new things, because this game hasn't had an update in 5 years. Now, I know, the news that the player count has diminished by a staggering amount, settling at about 4,000 concurrent average, which is a far-fetched from 18,000 peak, but it seems to be somewhat stabilizing at that. I don't really foresee the player count going beneath like 3,000 to 2,000 per day, which is still a very healthy community. You know, I play a lot of Gates of Hell, which is a smaller indie game compared to this for sure, and that on Steam gets 3 to 4K per day, just about. Now, of course, that game is still getting regular updates and has a lively competitive community and things along those lines. However, this game does not have that. But this, of course, is also on PlayStation, it's on Xbox, so it has a much farther reach. So, still, 2 to 3K per day on Steam is nothing to scoff at, and I think that would be a pretty realistic point in which the player count will diminish to in the coming weeks and months. Now, I do think that what really hurt everything was the constant pushes and constant hype. I think the main problem is that we just kept going with it, and still are every single day on r/Star Wars Battlefront and r/Star Wars Battlefront 2 and r/Battlefront and r/We Want Battlefront 3. My god, there are a million communities on Reddit for Battlefront, not to mention r/Star Wars games and things like that. It's everywhere. Every single day there are calls for another Resurgence Day. And I think people need to accept that that moment was just that. It was a great moment, and we all had fun playing it, but continuously spamming these communities is going to annoy the crap out of them, and also it makes the entire movement look a little bit more foolish, if we're being honest. It makes us seem like kind of just crazed fans who are demanding something and doing it over and over and over again, and it's kind of the definition of insanity. You try something over and over again and it doesn't work, and you know, that's that. There is no longer any type of coordination going on within the community. There is no form of actual strategy to get this done, that thing that everyone wants, and everyone has a different objective. Some people want Battlefront 3, some people want Battlefront 2 updates, some people want an entirely new studio to take over, some people just want a new multiplayer Star Wars game. And every day, just like the Resurgence Day posts, I see a new post asking for something different. And I think that was another major flaw in our overall plan, was the fact that we didn't have any coordination. a lot of us, including myself, were asking for Battlefront 3 right off the rip. And I really think we made a mistake in that, and, you know, I'll own up to that too. I think that was rather silly. We should have started smaller by just asking, like, hey, could we get a new hero? could we get an update to the servers to fix the hacking problem? Mayhaps, you know? Going for something along those lines, a much more easily obtainable thing to just get EA back into the idea of doing something for the Star Wars community would be huge, or just Disney in general. Asking for a full-blown Star Wars Battlefront 3 when we know for a fact that nothing has happened with this IP for 5 years, it might not have been the best idea. All that being said, I do think some progress has been made. And I think the future is going to depend on, you know, how people handle this. I think as long as the community doesn't get toxic, doesn't demand too much, doesn't start name-calling and things along those lines, things that the greater Star Wars community, the more diehards, tends to be kind of known for its toxicity a little bit. If that doesn't happen, we might still be in a good position to get something out of this movement. And I really think it depends on how we handle things in the future, because, after all, we did get their attention, and that's a very, very big deal. The fact that now Disney knows that there was a massive resurgence, and I think it's guaranteed that executives at Disney have heard about this. I think there is almost no possibility that one of the executives didn't hear about this massive resurgence in player count. And we know for a fact now that EA has heard about it. At first, there was only a small post from the F1 EA account, which is quite abysmal. That was terrible recognition. But then after that, there was news that EA executives met and said, no, we have no interest in working on another Star Wars property. The property is just not lucrative for us anymore. And that, you know, was a major bummer. And I think that still stands. I don't think that they're going to change their mind on that. I think we are guaranteed to not get anything from EA. And I went the completely wrong direction. I just did a loop. I think EA is out, and they've said that enough times, or hinted at it enough times, but then we did get acknowledgement from EA Play to go back and actually continue playing Star Wars Battlefront 2, acknowledging that, hey, there's a ton of people currently online, lots of people having fun, go check it out, go hop on, you can play for free if you have EA Play. I think that's pretty cool, and, you know, it helps boost the player count a little bit. It's a little bit more of mainstream recognition from an actual company associated with EA that isn't their F1 company, so that's nice. Not just an intern posting that, probably, you know, it looked pretty professionally made. But I think the most important thing is that this type of resurgence calls for further development of future games with other studios. So I really think that this will help us with another game studio making bids to make a Star Wars game. The problem is that that comes with some pretty heavy ties. Star Wars is a property that you must pay Disney to use. Not only do you need to first sign a contract that usually involves some type of a bid to actually work on a Star Wars property, but not only that, Disney is going to be taking a percentage of every sale associated with that game. And we're not just talking about physical game sales. If they do microtransactions, which almost every single modern shooter game does some type of microtransaction, then they're also going to be getting a little piece of that pie. So, having a company agree to work on a Star Wars game is a very, very tricky thing. Because not only are we not getting any really hyped movies, like when the original Star Wars Battlefronts came out, not the originals, but you know what I mean, the EA originals. When those were coming out, we were getting the Force Awakens movies and things like that. The sequel trilogy was releasing, there was huge hype about it. Right now, there's not really hype about much in terms of Star Wars other than Andor. So any kind of studio has to bank on Star Wars having enough longevity still to do huge numbers, enough to cover their own costs, as well as profit after paying Disney. So that's a pretty big ask for any type of game studio. So I think keeping up the pressure on playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 every single week is fairly vital. I think if we can make it a regular routine to just play a game or two every week, it'll show that this movement has longevity, and it makes it more likely that another game studio might take over the contract and start working on their own Star Wars Battlefronts. Now, if that does happen, and it's not EA, because it most certainly is not going to be EA, even though I really think DICE would be the best studio for Star Wars Battlefront 3, I think they've always been the best studio to take over Battlefront. But, that being said, not being EA, they probably would revamp it as an entirely new Star Wars Battlefront 1 rather than Star Wars Battlefront 3, since Star Wars Battlefront 3 would technically be EA associated. So all in all, I really think it's important to continue the support for Star Wars Battlefront 2, but at the same time, I think expectations need to be fixed a little bit. Seeing these posts every single freaking day about a new Resurgence Day that weekend or that Friday, having 8 different plans for Resurgence Day coming up, it's not helpful. And I get that people are just excited, you know, they're excited that their favorite game has some serious buzz still, but it just ends up burning people out. The thing is that the Resurgence Day was special. That was a special day, and I think in 3 months, if we do another one, in 6 months, if we do another one, that would also be special. And I think people would be very keen to partake every once in a while in a Resurgence Day. But demanding players hop on to try and break the player count again every single day, it's a grind. It annoys people. It is going to take all of the breath out of this movement overall. I think it is actually antithetical to the overall cause that we want. It works against it. It doesn't help and actually somewhat hurts the cause. That's my opinion. I think that if we continue to casually support the game the way it was meant to be played, that's more than enough. But asking for a Resurgence Day for people who have jobs and work for a living and don't want to worry about logging in every weekend and things like that, I think it's asking too much, and I think it's annoying people rather than actually helping anything. And on top of that, the thing that really I feel like puts the nail in the coffin with this is if people are continuously asking for player count increases. Look, the player count getting to what it was absolutely insane. That was so cool. But you really need to stop expecting that to happen again. I think maybe it will happen again one day, you know. Maybe if there are announcements made about a Battlefront game coming out, you know, if in a year there's another big push to get this done, if, you know, whatever. There are situations where the player count could be broken again. But calling for it to be broken every week is crazy, especially with dwindling numbers in terms of the game. It's completely silly to expect that, and then you're building up other people's... What the heck? You're building up other people's hype and then crushing them when we fall incredibly short. Because right now on weekends we're getting, you know, 6K players or whatever, which is great. That should be really, really good, considering 2 months ago we were getting 500 players on the weekends on Steam. Having 6,000 is still fantastic right now. But when people log in to see the player count after a big Reddit post getting 1,000 updates or whatever on breaking the player count again this weekend, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we didn't come anywhere near. We're at 1/3 the total number we need to break the player count again. That's just demoralizing, guys. It's not helpful. It's not helping anything. It's bringing people's hopes up and crushing them all in one swift motion. I really think we need to curb our enthusiasm here a little bit. Are you kidding me? I double-clicked. Oh, wait, I got it. Never mind. I thought I was getting bossed and then double-clicked on it, and then it said max. No, I don't know. There's, like, weird lag going on with the servers right now. I don't know what's happening. But, yeah. Guys, just, like, you know, curb your enthusiasm at least slightly for the sake of everyone involved and keeping this movement alive in its longevity. Because if we don't do that, I couldn't even touch the point. We're in overtime. I was trying to just dive for it, but got absolutely wrecked right there. And it's over. Okay. Yeah, we need to curb our enthusiasm. We need to make sure that we're working on this game as a collective. We need to make sure that overall we're not pressuring people too much. And we need to make sure that we set our expectations low and have this game become a longevity game that boosts itself up naturally over time to get a new game or a patch or something made. That's all I gotta say. The news is disappointing for sure, but it's not all bad news. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Be sure to click that subscribe button for more content, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted to whenever I live stream or upload. Thanks so much.